So VR is definitely more known as a medium for video games. It's very well suited for that purpose. And it's also known for other uses, such as for training the military, pilots, astronauts. It also has a lot of potential with medical and architecture fields. So I wanted to know, like, how does it fit with art? And why did HTC decide to collaborate with museums?
So you're very right that VR, one of the main driving forces for the entire technology and industry, of course, is gaming, as many other technology. And there are a lot of industrial application of VR as well. But the reason why we are doing art simply is because it's very important. Because technology, at the end of the day, is all about humanity. It's based upon humanity. And we cannot be obsolete from it. One of the main reasons why we started working with the arts in general actually came as an accident, in the sense that HTC VIVE is a Taiwanese company based headquartered in Taipei. In Taipei, we have our national museum called the National Palace Museum, which is a museum, I think, with annual attendance of about 7 million people. Quite large, and it houses our collection from basically the Chinese imperial court, meaning that a lot of important collection of the museum are so precious that they do not travel. But the museum, about 4 years ago, when they heard about this new upcoming technology, they thought that maybe it can help them in their practice. So there was a discussion between us and the museum about how this technology can potentially help the museum to do what they want to do. The museum's curator came up with the idea of using VR to create digital experiences that is easily portable and can travel anywhere without the concern of shipping and insurance and all that, and to find a new way to engage with the audience. So what they came up with is this idea of creating VR experience based on a selection of the highlight from the collection, and have this VR experience shown at its traveling exhibition across the country, as well as in their educational outreach to schools in remote area. And they found this result very, very encouraging. So the museum and us continue to collaborate it for a few times. That's how we started. And along the way, I think the result was seen by some museum practitioners, and they're interested in learning how technology can help them in their own area of interest in their original practice. So that's how we got involved.
So that ties in the next part of this little section that we would like to show you a video from Tate Modern, since I mentioned that Victoria and HTC have worked with the Tate Modern. So let's see the making of Modigliani VR, the Ochre Atelier.
The Modigliani retrospective here at Tate Modern takes you through the whole range of Modigliani's work. And when we go into the exhibition, we see paintings, we see sculpture, we see drawings by one of the most important artists of the 20th century. And yet, through the virtual reality, we start to get a real sense of environment.
Part of the Modigliani exhibition will be a virtual reality experience where they're recreating Modigliani's studio from 1919.
You get that kind of gut feeling understanding that you don't necessarily get from reading about it or just looking at it in sort of 2D pictures.
Understanding art is about understanding the painter and the paintings, and also the kind of historical and social context. And the opportunity we have with virtual reality and for this experience has been to try and deliver that in a very short experience that gets you really closer to those details.
It's amazing how many different departments at Tate it's touched on. So it's been collaboration across the organisation and also with Preloaded and with HTC.
We started with a blank canvas, and incrementally we've come to understand and build a picture about Modigliani I don't think people have necessarily seen before.
We really have paid a great attention to historical detail in this experience, whether that's from our researcher in Paris, Vincent Gilles, looking at what a stove should look like at that moment, to our co-curator in Milan, Simonetta Fratelli, looking at new Italian texts and bringing that material in.
Everything you see in the experience, everything that you kind of like interact with, everything that, you know, from the light coming through the whitewashed windows through to the, you know, the sardine tins to the colours of the palette are all completely kind of accurate. The space itself as a studio was never actually visited by anyone alive today.
Working with the VR team has been an incredible experience for me. So I've been very impressed with the way that they can take something that's 100 years old and then recreate it in a 21st century virtual setting.
The thing I enjoyed most was bringing the space to life. There were over 60 objects within the scene, and each model was taken from research and first-hand accounts. The technical research also enabled us to inform the markings on the canvas itself, to be able to inform the brush strokes and how you see that and how the light actually reflects on the surface of the model.
We have done an X-ray of the canvas and the stretcher. We've also looked at it in infrared, and then our conservation scientist Joyce Townsend has done analysis of pigments and media to work out exactly what he used.
The ochre atelier is an integral part of the exhibition. It does enhance the conclusions that you draw.
The sort of forensic level of historical research that's gone into this can really offer depth and accuracy and bring something else to the table.
This has been something really new for us, and it's been exciting to push those boundaries.
I can give a little bit of context about what you just saw. The Modigliani exhibition was on view at Tate Modern in London until early this spring. It's actually our very first project since the company started this dedicated program called VIVE Arts, which is a global program dedicated to the arts to enable art institutions and artists to use the latest technology in their own practice. As you can see in this clip, that there were a lot of very rigorous research and studies and rounds of visitor experience experiment testing on the museum side. So, yeah.
Next, I want to turn to Jane. From an archive perspective. So why does an archive like Asia Art Archive, which documents and archive contemporary art, wants to commission an artwork in VR format? And how will people access it in your library and reading room? What does it mean?
Hi. We didn't necessarily set out to commission an artwork. The occasion arose. It was our 15th anniversary of Asia Art Archive, and we decided to invite 15 art workers, artists, curators, writers, to come and engage the archive, because we think that our job is not just to collect and preserve documents, but it is to activate them and circulate them and hopefully initiate and catalyze new research and new knowledge based on these. And so we regularly have residencies for curators and artists at the archive to come. But this time we thought it was sort of an interesting idea to come up with 15 different kinds of practitioners. And, for example, we had Shilpa Gupta come in, and Rashid Rana come in, Walid Rad came in, Samson Young, who I think hopefully you all know through the projects at the Guggenheim that Lin Yilin is also involved with, the exhibition One Hand Clapping. You should go see it. But we decided to invite a woman by the name of Noni Lepena. She is a journalist and a VR specialist and an entrepreneur, because we thought it would be interesting to get somebody from VR to think about our archive in new ways, to challenge us, but also to address a certain question that we have about performance art. How do you preserve, how do you document and preserve performance art? It's very different than a painting or a sculpture where you can get a really good photograph. But performance art is ephemeral, it's time-based, it's site-specific, it's often participatory, How do you capture all of that in documents, which is what we have? Sometimes they're photographs, and you can have interviews, you can have different kinds of material, but how do you capture the spirit of performance? So we invited Noni, who has pioneered something called immersive journalism. And one of my colleagues was very impressed when they saw a project that Noni had done on Syria, where she used immersive journalism to put the viewer, inside the war zone. She also worked on a project where she worked on Guantanamo Bay, putting the participant inside the prison. So often in journalism, you're looking from here, from your sofa, from your couch, from your desk, and you see these horrific things happening, but you're outside them. And one of the issues that she has been concerned with is bringing the viewer, or us, inside. I just want to read a small quote from her. She says, by offering, and unfortunately she's the artist in this. She collaborated with Lin Yilin, but the work that you're seeing is by Noni Le Peña, and we can talk a little bit about the complexity there. And she unfortunately could not come today. But she says, by offering these kinds of experiences, we begin to leapfrog boundaries, walls, cultural differences, and take people into stories that they didn't have access to before. This is a little booklet we did for our 15 invitations, documenting the different projects. On another time, she says, or in an interview with Lin Yilin, she says, normally the environments I create for people to experience are hosted anywhere from film festivals to museums, like we are right now. But the aim is always the same, to bring subjectivity into play, as well as a sense of real empathy within the virtual content. So we thought it would be interesting to invite her to engage our archive to see what she could do. So we gave her choices. We gave her several files of different performance arts pieces from different parts of Asia. We focus on Asia, and we focus on contemporary art in Asia. But she chose Lin Yilin's piece because of its participatory nature, because of the challenge of putting the viewer into the position of the artist. So that's how it came about. I have other things to say, but why don't we stop there?
Sure. And I guess that actually tags along very well to my next question, because in our 2015 Arts and Museum Summit, so not the one last year, but the one 3 years ago, we also had the speaker who talked about using VR to archive or document or preserve culture, such as World Heritage sites like the Dunhuang Caves, or intangible heritage such as Confucian rituals or Southern Chinese martial arts. So I guess that always raises that question, is that actually preserving the work, or is VR just creating a new work of its own, like what Noni did with Lin Yilin's work? So what is your take?
Well, I think that is a very interesting question. And I think when we invited Noni to come, we, I think, imagined that she was going to help us think about how one would restage the work or reenact the work. But in fact, that's not what happened. When she looked at the file and became intrigued with Lin Yilin's original work, which is called Safely Maneuvering a Wall Across Lin He Road, which took place in Guangzhou in the middle of a road in 1995, where he moves a cinder block wall, block by block, across a road. She was intrigued by this, But when she started talking to Lin Yilin, and this happens with artists all the time, they never do what you want them to do. They decided to rethink the project completely, to reimagine this event in a completely new way. So what you're going to see uses Lin Yilin's original 1995 project as a point of departure, but it's very different in many ways. And I don't know whether I should give away how it's so different from Lin Yilin's original project, and maybe Lin Yilin can speak about that. But it's not a preservation of that project. It's actually a reimagining the project. But again, what is our encounter with art? What is your individual's encounter with art? When you see the artwork, is it just an artwork, or is it about your relationship and your imagination and your experience and your life and your background and your education that you're bringing to that is meaningful to you in ways that may not have been part of what the original artist imagined?
Thanks. And that also ties in very well to the next segment, which we will watch a little clip from Lin Yilin's 1995 performance, Safely Maneuvering Across Linghe Road.
先看一下录像。
I want to turn to Lin Yilin now that we've seen a little bit of what he was doing. And I also wanted to tell you that in total, that whole performance took 90 minutes to go across the street brick by brick. So my question for Lin Laoshi is, this is coming from a 1993 conversation he had with his fellow group artist in the Big Tail Elephant, when he talked about how artists can only have access to materials that are available to them in order to create their artworks. And later on, he also had another interview, which was actually with Noni. And this is on Asia Art Archive's website, and I encourage everyone to read it. It's very interesting. The two of them had a conversation in which Lin Laoshi mentioned that he well, I guess I should use second person. You said you're always very curious about new technology. So some of your recent experiments, both with the work here, and which is a collaboration between you and Noni, and the work currently on view at the Guggenheim, which is titled Monad. What do they teach you about working with this new technology?
我记得是2016年的时候是 AA， 然后问我是不是要把这个 performance 的这个project 把它改成这个 VR 作品。那么之前我是没有看过任何的 VR 的，然后我就有点疑惑，我觉得如果是把这个作品再做成一个 VR 的一个movie， 就是一个 VR 电影，我觉得可能就没有这个必要了。那么后来我想到是不是可以把它变成一个观众参与的一个互动的作品呢？然后就跟罗里也讨论过，然后他的想法跟我的想法也是一样的，那么就决定做这个 VR 作品。
So when I had this discussion, Mike. When I had this discussion with Noli Del Piana in 2016, well, actually, AAA approached me first about this particular project and asking me that Del Piana, she's interested in, I guess, reiterate or reimagine this particular piece I did in 1995 and turn that into a VR project. And at the time, I had actually never seen any VR project before, so I was a little confused and puzzled by what this might be like when they finish the project, and if they just want to make this particular work into this VR version of the virtual reality. I really didn't think that it's necessary. And then later on, I think that through my discussion with Del Piana, we were on the same page about the fact that instead of just restating and restaging what I did in 1995, we are focusing on this concept of audience participation. So make it very, very participatory, very interactive, and that was something that we decided to do.
像我们这一代这个中国艺术家是非常矛盾的，因为我们的这个童年少年都是在这个文革的时候度过，然后在那个时候中国的这个物质包括生活的物质也好，商品这个物质也好是非常缺乏，所以对这个物质的概念是非常强烈。然后不管他是做什么样的艺术，包括画国画也好，画油画也好，做雕塑也好，那么到了80年代中期的时候，很多艺术家都在探讨这个物质在这个艺术上怎么运用的问题。然后像我到了90年代初的时候，就开始做这种装置的时候，是很注重这个物质，在我的作品里边的一个对社会的一个反应。然后同时呢，90年代初的时候已经开始有电脑的运用在比如说这个室内设计啊，或者说广告设计上面。所以我当时是在一个广告公司里面工作啊，也是做这种这个室内装修，那么也是最早这个接触这个电脑的这一代人。所以呢这个一方面一个很物质化的一个这个要求，那么同时呢又是涉及到对这个高科技的一种向往。
So I think artists from my generations, we have a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues, a lot of dilemma that we have to resolve along the way because of our experience through the Cultural Revolution period. So this concept of materiality, the materials that we can use, is definitely on the forefront of a lot of artists, just because purely out of necessity that we need to find what we have and accessible to us, and this scarcity of the materials that we can utilize to produce and to create works, whether or not it's oil painting, whether or not it's Chinese landscape painting, whether or not it's sculptures, it's really much about how we're going to utilize the limited resources and limited materials that we have and make them into an artwork. So I do think that this reflects my work in the 1990s. I did a lot of installation pieces, and then all of them is using this concept, either the materials or the lack of materials or lack of the elements that they can use. In this case, probably will be bricks, using that as a way to talk about and as a social commentary to the issues as a society that we're experiencing at the time. And also in the beginning of 1990s, it's also the beginning of the age of computers, and people are in China, in this case, that we just started to have the access to computers, and people started using computers for either interior design or for to produce commercials and advertising using computers. And at the time, I was working in an interior design office, and I had first-hand experience of this particular technology. And as you can see, coming from someone from a very, very when the resources were very, very scarce and very, very limited, and now suddenly you have this new technology, has a lot of possibilities, and it's a very, very interesting transition for me as an artist to trying to reconcile these things, not only going from material things to the actual technologies that we can utilize for artistic expressions.
所以AA 就搭建了这个平台，然后我有这个很幸运的机会，能够涉及到这个 VR 的这种这个创作或者说合作上面，所以我觉得怎么说呢？反正就是一个机会吧。对。
So I definitely think that this is a great opportunity for me as an artist, thanks to the platform, the AAA Asian Art Archives already established for me to have this opportunity to collaborate with De La Peña with this particular VR project.
Okay, and I have a continuing question, which is, I guess, do you have any suggestions to VR developers now that you've tried it a couple of times?
对于这些 VR 设计人、城市设计人有没有什么建议？
我觉得，因为这个 VR，其实现在有很多 VR， 这个艺术家涉及到做这个 VR 的作品，但是我觉得跟这个艺术家的比例来说还是很少啊。然后怎么样的 VR 作品才是最好的这个一种跟艺术创新有关系的一个创作呢？那么这个可能要经历一个过程。那么我觉得对于 VR 公司的一个期待就是有更多的合作，然后让更多的观众能够一起参与或者说在这个过程之中有很多更深入的话题那么我们可能在这个领域里边就会有一个跟现在很不一样的一个改变，它变成一个一种形式也好，或者说一种这个艺术门类也好。那么我觉得它的前景是这样的，就在这个艺术方面。
So in terms of for future VR programmers, I do think that right now there have been artists using VR as a vehicle for their artistic expressions and for their artwork, but I do think that in comparison to the actual numbers of artists that we do have currently working, it's definitely in the very, very low percentage. It's still very, very rare. So I do think that in a way that we need to start thinking about how we use this as a medium to create works, and how we're going to make it in terms of how do we make it innovative enough for us to see this as something that is it's worthy of the process of using this particular medium to create work. So I do think that it still needs some time for us to go through that process, to rethink and to think about how VR as a medium can be part of the artistic community, and how we're going to utilize it in such a way that can be valued as such that this is definitely something new, something innovative. So if anything that I can offer as a suggestion is to have more collaboration opportunities with artists. So by doing that, not only we can start working on this concept of audience participation, make it participatory for audience to be able to immerse themselves in this particular medium. And also, I think another very important issue is whether or not we can use this to talk about and examine a lot of serious issues very, very critically and deeply using the VR format. So I do think that there are a lot of changes that we can, I hope that will happen in the future. And then in terms of using this as a form, or as a genre, as a medium of art expressions is something that I look forward to see the development in the future.
Thanks. So now I want to just ask more general questions to everyone on the panel. So I guess all of us have also, in addition to experiencing works that we either produced ourselves or commissioned, we've also experienced other artworks in museums or in a biennial context, and I just wanted to see like how everyone feels about the other artworks or experiences they have. What are your takeaways? What were your thoughts? Anyone can answer.
In terms of VR works.
In terms of VR works in a museum or biennial or artwork kind of environment.
I am not a gamer. I don't play games. I play games, but not virtual games. Computer games, I don't. So this has all been very, very new to me, actually. So I can't speak that I've seen a lot of VR work at all. As I said, we worked on this with Lin Yilin and Noni. So it's the one that I've thought about the most deeply. But I've also seen Lin Yilin's work at the Guggenheim Museum right now, and it's very different from this work. I have seen work that was at the Forshow Gallery in Beijing. They did a series asking artists from European or non-Asian artists or non-Chinese artists and some Chinese artists to do some work. And I'm not sure what I think. So let me speak just a little bit. I mean, this is just off the top of my head and really completely sort of unresolved, but about this work in particular. And sort of what when we invite artists, it's really to activate, to do something, to challenge us, to ask questions, to tell new stories, to look at our archive in a way that is as a catalyst. And artists always do very, very interesting things. And this is also an interesting one. And the artwork that came out of it, to me, brought issues around, made me sort of realize that it can sort of help us think through the emotions and the feelings of an artist at the time that they're working, because you actually step into their shoes. Now, this is different than what Lin Yilin went through. It's much faster. It's not 90 minutes. You're not carrying the very heavy bricks one by one across. There's no real physical aspect to it. But there's certain other kinds of aspects to it. There's a certain sense of anxiety. There's a goal, right, like a game. But you are allowed to do different things. So there's a sense of pressure, stress, anxiety, frustration, excitement. There's also kind of a tedium. I mean, his performance was very tedious, meaning very boring at a certain level, one after another, and repetitive. And this is much faster, and there's some gimmicks. There's some ways to cheat on this one. But there are also, you can start imagining or thinking about issues around tedium or anxiety. So I think that is actually very interesting. It's a very productive outcome of this experiment. But there's something still, from me, slightly gimmicky about it, to be frank. The graphics are kind of not beautiful. I can't relate to them particularly. They're very kind of heavy and artificial. But it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm glad. I'm really glad we had this experience, and I want to know more about it. I want to do it again.
For me, because of my work, I see a lot of VR works, be it VR experiences created by museums for exhibitions and all that, or VR artworks created by artists directly, or just as Lin's experience working with a VR specialist, a VR studio. One of the recent example that I saw was quite compelling is what I saw at a talk given at the Royal Academy in London earlier this year. It was a conversation led by the director of the museum, Tim Marlowe, with the artist Marina Abramovich, the performance artist, and also Anish Kapoor. So they were having a good debate about how the two artists think about VR as a medium and their experience creating a VR work for the first time. But what really impressed me was what I saw that day, how people reacted to the VR work they saw. So Anish Kapoor, known for his spatial installations, large-scale created spatial experiences, he used VR, I think, so well in the sense that he really gets what this medium brings about. Because some people I think Anani also thinks the same way, that VR is an empathy machine because of its unique nature that you will see after this talk. It really generates and brings out strong feelings from any audience. So Anish used this nature of VR to the fullest in the sense that he created a series of spatial experience that is so poetic and so impossible outside of the VR scenario. And also he worked with his son who composed the soundtrack that you will see within that experience. I think that was a very good piece of work I recently saw.
Oh, thanks. That's good to know, because I was just thinking that, also building on what Jane was saying, that, and also what you're saying, that it does bring out your empathy for the artist of having to go through this labor and this material. And while the materiality has been reduced from physical bricks to just your headset and the wand, but in a way that when you're in it, it does feel very real, that you're experiencing something, that you get scared when, say cars are coming at you, when the bricks are falling apart, and you get very, disoriented too about where you are and your relation with your spatial relation with the objects that you see but are actually not there. And I also agree with Jane that I feel like there are certain artworks probably do feel a little bit gimmicky, and it's probably also because of the graphic treatment of a lot of the VR works, that they don't look real enough. They to you, it's just a drawing, a computer 3D modeling, and not necessarily what we would actually consider reality. But obviously there's a long way to go with that.
Can I add? Actually,
yeah,
it has been a long way. When we were having the discussion with the museum curator at Tate, we discovered that the theory or the discussion about how VR being an artistic medium actually has started a long time ago, in 1995, when we were just discussing in 96, the Guggenheim didn't even have a website, so it was that long ago. In 1995, there was a one-day conference taking place at Tate, talking about how artists and curators see VR as a medium. And that was a long time ago. Back then, what they saw visually was probably very, very different from what we can see today. But the technology has come to a place where it's actually matured in the sense that from about 2-3 years ago, VR had the visual quality, although there is always space for improvement, has actually been compelling enough for people to be tricked into thinking that it's a reality. Depending on how the work is designed, of course, some things are designed to be graphically very real, and some things are not. But we now get to see more and more things on that end. That's very exciting.
Thanks. So I would like to open to the audience for questions, and because we're recording the program, so please wait for the microphone to come to you. And I see one question at the front. So can we take the first one?
Hi, I'm Kent. A quick question for Victoria. How much time it took for the program that you were involved in at the Tate for the Modigliani, from the programmer's time as well as from the museum time? Because this is, the cost. So I'm more curious to see how museums are getting involved in the costs associated with the VR in producing the show.
So the first question being how much time it took. I think for the museum, from our very first discussion, it was more than a year until the exhibition opened. And afterwards, of course, there are a lot of time spent on the research. They went to Paris to see the actual artist studio, which is still there nowadays. But of course, it's been put into different use. It was right now an Airbnb. You can actually live in the studio. Modigliani lived and worked through Airbnb. Anyway, so a lot of time was spent doing that. And the actual execution of the VR studio, developing the experience, took about 6 months.
Can you share the cost of that show?
I'm afraid I can't, but it's actually easy calculation because the cost of developing VR studio basically is the salary of the developers that was employed to execute. So
how many programmers?
I think who was involved in the London project was about 6 to 8, something like that. For half a year, but I don't have exact calculation on.
Next question. Okay, we'll take the one in the back first.
First of all, thank you very much. Very fascinating conversation, and I have so many questions and comments, but I'd like to restrict myself with maybe one or two. So, when you talk about VR and association with art, are you limiting the scope to, say, visual or performing art? You're also thinking about other art forms like music and writing as well, because clearly there are so many opportunities there. And Victoria, if you want, I can discuss that with you afterwards. So that's one. And the other one, you answer it first, and maybe I'll come back to the area, because I want to take the opportunity from other people to ask questions. You have so many.
Yeah, can we actually limit to one person per person, one question per person, so that everybody gets an opportunity? But take away.
I guess yes, absolutely. There are use of VR in every aspect across art. For instance, in music, opera houses, orchestras, you can see a lot of VR experience that has already been created. Probably not online just yet. They're usually site-specific so far, so maybe it's not as widespread just yet, but yet they do exist. And even in architecture, architects has been using VR in their practice, probably the earliest, because they're very prone to producing visual experiences for their clients to be able to envision whatever that's going to be built. So a lot of architects has been using VR in their practice for years. Yes.
But how about when I talk about like writers, like visual novels, think about that. Jane talked about immersive journalism, like taking the reader or viewer into the actual one. So how about that as a possibility of a novel which you can read and view, or do a combination of both?
I don't think I've seen an example like that, but it definitely sounds very possible. To me, I guess it just awaits a person who comes up with a brilliant idea and then put it into practice.
And the question in the front.
And I have a question. Thank you all for sharing. This is for Jane. And, we talk about the VR as far as an empathy machine. Wanted to ask you further regarding VR, with kind of as based on also from your comments of how it's very heavy, but if you had made more of it like trompe l'oeil or more photorealistic and kind of creating more of that the ability to transport the viewer to something that's kind of actually drives more compassion versus empathy. Wanted to just kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Again, I'm not, don't know what the technology is doing, and if it exists. I mean, I think we asked when we all were experiencing this. We actually we presented this at Asia Art Archive in America on last weekend, and it brought forth a lot of questions about the experience itself and where the technology is. And again, I think the technology that we use for this may have been sort of less expensive, perhaps, than some of the technology that's out there that could be more expensive, that maybe would make it look more realistic or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how that came up. But clearly, there's aspects of the experience that, you're tethered to a rope. There's a wire that goes, and that was always, that's a sense that it sort of feels very limiting in a way. And what the gentleman, and I think he's here today, was telling me is that you're going to, very, very soon, the whole experience will be in the headset and that you will be untethered, right? So you can walk around. Second of all, what you were talking about is being the environment, the graphics, the setting will be so much more realistic that, in fact, it will almost look like you're that it's in a real space. Or he was also talking about how you could actually take real spaces, right? You're in the back there. Come here. Help me out here.
Well, actually, yes. There are already hardwares that make viewers put on the headset without any constraints with the cord available already.
And then, but the setting that you're in, I mean, it was very clear we were in a fairly basic graphic setting. But the settings are now going to, you can imagine, and will probably be something that looks like you're actually in the street or in the real street.
Right. So we can mix reality into virtual reality. And as you'll see on the headsets, you'll notice there's it looks like two eyes. It's two cameras, and in the future we'll be able to have experiences where you mix reality, and you'll have virtual art inside a real space.
So I think all of those things will help, to your point, you feel potentially more compassionate or empathetic because you won't be reminded of the artificiality of it. And I think this will be very, very interesting.
I think we have time for one last question. Hold on. How many people would like to experience the VR artwork so that I know if we can go on for more questions? Or can you raise your hand if you want to try it out? Okay, so we have quite a number. So, okay, I think I can take maybe two more questions. So this...
Hi, this question is for Jane and for Lin Lao Shi. So the VR art, as I've heard, and as a millennial, I've also experienced before, but I feel that there's is not as accessible for comparatively to other kind of art forms. So for paintings or sculptures, for a student like me, I would be able to go online and research and look at it. But for VR art specifically, I would need to experience it in a certain place or a museum. So would you say that this limitation would be pushing forward for artists to execute their artwork because it's so exclusive, or is it going to push it back because of its limitations?
That's a very good question, actually. Accessibility, and does the increased accessibility around artwork make it less interesting for the artist to make or more interesting for the artist to make? I mean, it's a very interesting question. We as an archive are about accessibility. What our major goal is to make the material within our archive accessible, because we feel that has a catalytic effect on interest around the material, and will will do work that the material won't be able to do if it's not accessible. It may be something that a scholar could find if that scholar is highly motivated, but how would the scholar even know it was there if they didn't already know it was there, type of thing. But we really want to put material, knowledge, and art into play, okay? And we think that's exciting for artists. The fact that this is not online, like a image will be online or a picture of a scarf, is only a matter of time, I think, and money, because these things have to be supported on a server, and the servers cost money and various things. But that's coming soon. So just wait a moment, because I think it's much more possible. It's more and more possible, and there are VR experiences that are online, and I was just learning about it from my colleagues here.
I was trying to convince Jane to bring the VR experience online so that more people can see it, because one of the value that VR brings to the art is that it can be so accessible. For example, for today, Lin Yilin and Jane decided that they want to put this experience online. Anyone around the world who has any kind of headset can download it and enjoy in their home, in school. So I think this is definitely something that will happen very soon. Well, it's happening. It is there already, but more and more works will become more accessible for everyone.
我读过几个月前的那个 Art Forum 有一个专题是这个讨论这个 VR 的艺术，然后里边有2个作者就谈到这个 VR 的这个本体论的问题就说一般的观众去到这个博物馆或者说一个空间里边看这个 VR， 然后戴了这个 VR 头盔之后，是等于是自己一个人跟周围的观众隔绝的，然后他们很难像看这个video art 或者说看绘画看这个雕塑就没有一个共享的这种时间的机会然后呢这种状况就很像一个人在读小说或者说读文章，然后他可以在自己的房间里边一个人去享受。那么他们认为这个 VR 以后的这个价值可能是在这个网络里边去体验的，不一定去到这个美术馆去那么我觉得2种情况都会有，就是说有一种类型的艺术家他希望把这个 VR 放到这个网络里面去，那么有另外一些艺术家他更愿意把自己的这个 VR 作品放到这个博物馆，然后宁愿别人去排队去等，一个人去等去看这个作品。那么等于现在有一些这个 video art 一样它不可能放到这个电视上面，或者说就变得很大众化很流行，然后可能就不看的人就不看了，就等于看一部很闷的一个文艺片一样，可能有人就不喜欢看有人可能很愿意待一天在那边所以我觉得这个场合其实就是一个怎么说呢，就它提供了一个机会让你不是在家庭那么放松的环境里边去体验一个作品这个区别还是蛮大的。
Yes, I have that. 不是，我忘了我有麦克风。So actually, I read an article published in Art Forum about a few months ago, and they were talking exactly about this particular issues. It's how we're going to define and understand and appreciate this new art form called using VR to produce artworks. And I do think that some of the writers, they're making arguments that for this particular VR experience, especially in the museum, it's almost as if that when you put on the headset, you have isolated yourself from the people around you in that particular time and space, and you're on your own and in your own world. This virtual world being created by the artist. So in a way that it's actually not the same as going to the museum to have this shared experience, collective experience with other museum goers to actually appreciate one paintings or one sculptures that being displayed in front of you. It almost as if that you are in your own room, in your own home, reading a novel, reading an essay, reading short stories, and it's a very, very individualistic act of art appreciation. So I do think that the technology, as Victoria mentioned, that is there already in terms of you can put VR works online, but at the same time is that there are artists out there still think that it might be necessary to create a site-specific environment in the museums for people to wait to go into that particular space and then experience that in that particular site and being designed for this particular work. And I do think that, and of course there are people saying that this should be more accessible and then put it online for everyone to enjoy. And I do think that in terms of from the perspective of the audience and the experience they will have will be completely different. How you do it, whether or not it's in your own home and it's accessible, or that you're actually going to a museum to appreciate and to enjoy that particular artwork collectively and with this shared experience with other museum goers.
And I just wanted to add one thing, and I'd love to ask the question back to you. Is seeing it in your room by yourself on your laptop, does that diminish or increase your interest? Does it reduce or increase your interest in seeing it in a museum space, in a site-specific space, in a certain environment? For example, if you saw the Mona Lisa in reproduction, or another painting by Jackson Pollock, but in reproduction, does that increase or reduce your interest in seeing the original?
I think, personally speaking, as an art student myself, of course, it increases my thirst to see it in person. But I think what's more important is for other young people like me to have their interest in art, have more interest in art, as to learn from art through art and learn from politics or history. So in a way, I would personally think that hopefully, and everyone around my age would feel the same way as I do, to see something online and then realize they want to know more about it, and then going into a museum to see more. But I think it's important. It's also important for them to see it first online before seeing it in a museum. So I think that's why it's also very important to have it online for young people like me to actually get in touch with.
And if I can just take this opportunity to add something even more detailed explanation what Lin Yilin has said before, because it's at the corner of my note papers. I just realized I didn't really interpret that properly. So in terms of going to the museum to have that shared collective experience, and some artists, for example, video art installation artists, they will think that if we just put this, let's say, on TV, they make it so accessible, it somehow defeats the whole purpose of having that site-specific installation of that particular video artwork. And just like the same way, if you go to an art house movie to watch a boring art house film, and it attracts very, very limited, selected people who appreciate that kind of art films. Whereas if you just think that if your purpose as an artist is to make this into something for the general public and almost into a pop culture, and that is somehow doesn't go well with certain either directors or artists when they have their artwork. When they create their artwork, they don't have that kind of massive popular audience in mind. And so I do think that that's the reason why you have this still constant debates about whether or not this should be more accessible or make it more exclusive.
And also tagging on that, just providing a small statistics that I read today. In 2016, the research showed that in America, 77% of people own smartphones, whereas only less than 2% of households own VR headsets. So last question.
The panelists, like we have a lot of conversation about VR, like how to make the VR more visually appealing and more interesting. Is it the gamification of art, and also how can we distinguish a VR art and a VR game?
对啊，就是用虚拟的艺术和虚拟的游戏啊，他们之间是怎么界分？如果每个都把它做成什么样的 现实怎么样的去？
对。对这个问题，其实从这个作品，从这个Lolly 改编我这个 performance 这个 VR 的作品里边，就涉及到这两方面的问题。因为那天星期天在Chang他们那个空间里边展示的时候，有2个年轻人，然后他体验过，然后就跟我说，他这个作品是给这个初级玩游戏的人去玩的。那么我听了这个就有一个触动，因为其实我试这个VR 才试了3次，那么前2次我自己都没有打过，那么认为我可能连一个初级玩这个游戏人都不是。那么这里有一个问题，就是他把它就是说從一個藝術品變成另外一個藝術品。那麼現在 VR 的元素很多都是跟這個遊戲 game 有關係的。那麼是不是藝術它跟這 game 是不能分離，還是可以分離了？那麼然後我在這個古漢做的另外一個 VR 作品的時候，就是跟遊戲完全沒關係了。那麼我覺得遊戲也可以作為一個藝術作品的一個成分，這個我覺得沒有必要把它這個完全分開。那麼這裡邊涉及到這個 VR 你這個作品作為這個藝術的時候，你怎麼設定啊？它的受眾群是什麼樣的？是玩遊戲的人呢，還是對藝術有興趣的人呢？啊，我覺得很難是兩方面的人都能去照顧。那麼等於在現在你這個體現這個作品的時候，我也可以不從這個遊戲的這個角度去體驗，那麼可以通過這個原作跟這個這個 VR 作品的一個對比啊，它一個反物質非物質的啊，然後它搬磚這個過程是沒有這個重量的啊，那麼可以考慮的問題其實挺多的，只是我們沒有太多時間去討論關於這個 VR 的本質本身是什麼。那等於這個卡通，那麼有很多藝術家也用這個卡通來做，那麼同時它也是一個這個娛樂性的一種方式。那麼我覺得我們是如果看得更多這種作品，那麼這些問題就更容易清楚一點。
So I do think that in terms of the distinction and the line between VR art and gaming, it's very much what I'm experiencing with this particular work, because last Sunday when we had this particular opportunity for the audience to try out this particular new VR piece by De La Peña, I remember one of the participants, he said to me that this is for a rudimentary gamer. This game is so lame that it's not sophisticated enough. So I heard about this particular comment, and I thought about my own experience. Actually, I tried this game 3 times. The first 2 times, I actually failed to cross the road. So it just shows you how non-technology savvy I am as a gamer, I guess. So I do think that in terms of this line or this distinction between arts and VR arts and gaming, it's ones that we need to start thinking about how it's a complex connections. And since a lot of people, they started with gaming, and that's how they have their first experience with VR, and how are you going to transform that into the experience of art appreciation. And this particular piece that De La Peña create is based on it's an artwork based on an artwork that I created in 1995. And so to me, these are the 2 artwork, but at the same time, why is that suddenly it became a game for some of the people who participated in this particular art experience? So I do think that not in no way to say that somehow we need to make a very, very clear distinction of what is art, what is online or VR games, because you can create an artwork using the gaming motif if that is your intention. If you have very clear target audience in mind when you produce your work, whether or not you're targeting more the gamer community, or you're targeting more of the art, the museum goer community, then you might create different works. Because obviously, for my own work or the artwork that La Peña created, we could take a completely different route. For example, we can create an artwork just to going from the materiality of my work with this particular bricks that I use for my performance. And then when De La Peña created VR version, could be about the process of which without involving any games in the design at all. And that can still be a different type of artwork created using VR as a medium. The same way that a lot of artists using animation as a way to create their artworks, even though the animation is understood almost like a pop culture entertainment, but at the same time, is that how are you going to use that in such a way that somehow make this transcend just the boundary purely for entertainment, but also become the animation artwork itself. So I do think that we still need a lot of time to have more artists involved creating more VR works so that we can actually start examine these issues and start to really think very deeply about the differences and the lines that we can draw or should not draw between VR art and gaming.
Just as a closing note to add to that, in Asia Society Museum's collection, we recently acquired a work by the Chinese artist Lu Yang, which is actually an arcade game that we had in our lobby for a while. Actually, all summer, it became a competition among colleagues to win the game. The game was called Uterus Man, where this very like a very Japanese anime type of character who is very muscly, but also like very androgynous, riding on the sanitary napkin and then navigating, the uterus. So it has its levels of everything, but it is presented as a video game, but at the same time it's a contemporary artwork. And another example of video game as art is another Chinese artist, Feng Mengbo. He also has the Long March, where and it's actually projected on like in a room about this big and it's about this long, and then you can in the museum play this video game that's based on the history of Long March but in the style of Super Mario, like a very old school video game. So to close, for everyone who wants to experience the passage, we would like you to line up in just one queue. And as you know, our exhibitions are still open until 9 o'clock. So what we'll do is if you want to put your name down, and then we'll give you an approximate time for you to come back. If you want to do something else, you can do that. And then just come back maybe like 10 minutes before the time that you have, because not everybody needs 10 minutes to accomplish this impossible goal. Some do, and you can definitely don't feel judged if you don't finish it. I mean, I had the feeling on Sunday that I really wanted to, just abandon it. But anyhow, so. And just come back and we'll call your names. If you didn't show up when we call your name, then we'll give it to the next person. But if you come back, and we'll squeeze you in. So we have until 9 o'clock to do this. And again, our exhibitions are on the second and third floors. And thank you so much for coming. I want to thank my fellow panelists that allow me to stage this little evening. And thanks. And